Hello, everybody, and welcome to the webinar of INGO project. This is the project initiated by the Central Baltic Interreg program, and the very essence of the project is to help the tech companies to approach and work successfully together with the NGOs. Today, we are concentrating on how to do business and how to work together with CERN, because CERN obviously is one of the largest research institutions globally, and obviously being huge as that, providing a lot of different collaboration and cooperation, but also business opportunities for tech companies. My name is Martin Goroško. I'm the head of business development at Tallinn Science Park Tehnopol, and I'm going to be the moderator for today's webinar. It's going to be straight 2 hours, but I can promise you that there is going to be a lot of awesome content in here. So stay tuned and try to stick with us throughout these 2 hours. Quickly walking you through the agenda as well. First of all, I'm going to take a brief moment and tell you exactly what the INGO project is about and where we can actually support the companies, because webinars like that are just like a peak of the project and mostly giving you the information about the opportunities, but there are a lot of different hands-on support available for the companies besides that as well. After that, we are going to dig deeper into the collaboration opportunities with CERN, and we are going to have a rather comprehensive presentation by Adam William Horridge, who is going to cover all the opportunities that companies might have in order to do business with CERN. After that, we are going to have 2 case studies, one of them coming from Sweden, the other one from Estonia. So 2 companies are presenting how they have done already business with CERN and what are the tips and tricks they want to give you in order to be as successful as they were. Then we're going to have a brief 5-minute break before the workshops and parallel sessions are starting, but I can definitely assure you that the most fruitful part of the session today is going to be the separate workshops which are going to be concentrating on the very essence how you can work with CERN, because it's going to be moderated by the regional or national representatives of CERN, and they are going to give you a very country-specific view, which opportunities are there for the companies joining us from Estonia, Sweden, Finland, but also from other regions. After that, we're going to wrap up the webinar, and that's going to be it. I'm really pushing you and hoping that you are going to be as interactive as possible, because I mentioned that there are going to be the workshop where you can take the mic, where you can actually engage. But also, if you have some questions, concerns that you want to address, then feel free to use the chat room of the Zoom. I'm going to be following that all the time. And if you have like immediate and quick questions to the presenters that are online, then feel free to type in the question, and I'm going to be taking those questions after the presentation has ended. But now, really briefly about the project as well. The project was already launched 2 years ago, and it was launched by 4 partners. Estonia, Sweden, Latvia, and Finland. Tallinn Science Park Tehnopol representing Estonia, RISE from Sweden, IT Cluster from Latvia, and Business Stamper from Finland. The very essence of the project is to support the companies, especially tech companies, to work together with the NGOs, doing that via different procurements, but also direct collaboration opportunities. Because the one triggering thing why we launched the project was that actually those NGOs globally, they have very many different procurements ongoing, and the business volume of those procurement is as high as 20 billion euros annually. So basically, it's kind of like an untapped potential for different companies, and this is something that we want to change with INGO project. The companies that we are working with are mostly tech companies, mostly early stage companies, but the very essence is that we're providing a very comprehensive overview of what is out there for those companies, what type of procurement opportunities are there. So we're trying to map the whole ecosystem and presenting those opportunities directly back to the companies. If we find a very awesome angle how we can work and bid in the procurement, then we try to formulate the consortia between the companies to make stronger bids in terms of technology, but also the business case. On top of that, we are providing advisory for the companies, so there are mentors available who can support you in terms of building up the legal framework, in terms of setting up the bid in the procurement, but also to provide you hands-on support and help to actually and successfully delivering this procurement. Obviously, we are having very many webinars, seminars, informative events like that, where we concentrate especially to specific NGOs, bringing on those representatives from the NGOs, just to elaborate and give you the direct insights, what is happening in the organization, just to you to maybe discover and find out the potential collaboration moments. One of the most relevant thing and service that we are providing in the course of the project is definitely the business missions. If we see that there is a huge volume or set of companies who are interested in very specific organization or maybe very specific country where the majority of the NGOs are located, let's say, or the events or conferences happening on the topic, then we are putting together the business missions of the companies, preliminary arranging those one-on-one meetings on site and having very fruitful sessions in different countries as well. If you're interested in joining the program, then I can assure you that after all those fruitful content that we are going to deliver right now, I'm going to deliver you the direct contacts of the representatives of the project, so you can be engaged right away and contact us if you feel so. But let's start off with the program. As I promised you, the first keynote speech is going to be delivered by the representative of CERN, and I'm really glad that we have Adam William here and going to be delivering the speech and the presentation on CERN. It's going to be a 40-minute presentation following up with 10 minutes of the Q&A. And again, I want to remind you that if you have any questions, just type them in the chat room, and we have plenty of time after the presentation to concentrate on the questions and answers as well. So if you're ready, then let's do it, because I am, and I hope you are excited as well. So Adam, if you can hear us, then I would ask you to share the slides now, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Martin. I'll just load up my slides now. There we go. So thank you for the introduction, Martin. Yeah. Great. Thanks. And a very good morning to everybody joining today. Thanks to all of you for taking the time. My name's Adam Horridge. I'm a procurement officer here at CERN. My day-to-day activities focus primarily on our construction and civil engineering contracts, but I'm also responsible for outreach events with our member states and our country representatives, such as the event that we're all participating in today. So it's very nice to meet you all virtually. In terms of my presentation today, I'll start off with an introduction about CERN, what we are from a broad perspective and why we set up our procurement rules in the way that we do. I'll then cover some statistics on the categories of spend that we have and how much we spend per year and what that typically looks like. Then I'll go into a bit more detail on the procurement process itself, what it will look like from your perspective if you're participating, depending on the value of the contract being tendered. I then have a couple of slides on feedback we've had in recent years from industry about what companies consider the impact of doing business with CERN is for them. Then I have a handful of slides on information, resources, and contacts for you going forward if you look to do business with us. And at the end of the presentation, I have a series of slides on some forthcoming tendering opportunities that we have. There are very many slides there, so I'll pass through those relatively quickly, but you will all have access to this entire slide deck as part of the event. So please take the time to digest those slides at your leisure following or during the breakout sessions that come afterwards. So in terms of an introduction, for those of you who may be a little bit less familiar with CERN and where we are and what we do, we're based in Geneva in Switzerland, and we straddle the border between France and Switzerland here. This is the Large Hadron Collider Ring, about 100 meters underground. We're the world's largest particle physics laboratory, and we recently celebrated our 70th birthday. We were established in the aftermath of the Second World War with a mission of science for peace. And one particularity about the organization is that we are an international organization from a legal perspective, which means that we have immunity of jurisdiction and execution. So what does that mean? Why is that important? So with that status, we have entitlement to set our own rules for certain aspects of our functioning. And these include our procurement rules, our safety rules for activities on site, and the employment rules about our staff and personnel. So our procurement rules, therefore, are distinct. You may have experience or familiarity with other types of public procurement rules or other big science institutes. Please bear in mind that CERNs are specific to CERN alone. And I'll explain a few of the key concepts behind there. They're obviously based on many best practices that you would expect for a public procurement organization, but they are dedicated to CERN's activities. So in terms of CERN as an organization and what it looks like, back when we started, we had originally 12 member states. We've grown to 24 member states, and including 10 what we call associate member states as well. You can see from the map there, we began primarily as a European organization, but we've expanded quite significantly in subsequent years. Our annual budget is around 1.3 billion Swiss francs, which is roughly equivalent to euro. And you can see here in terms of the numbers of people that participate on the project and the geographical spread, it's really an international endeavor. And just drilling a bit further into that budget, so I said 1.3 billion overall for the organization. These contributions come from our member states, and the payments are made to CERN by calculation as a function of each country's GDP. So you see here the list of annual contributions made by each of our member states. And we have a footnote here that we welcomed Brazil as an associate member state last year, so they will now be part of this list and the organization going forward also. So in terms of that procurement spend, this chart here dates back almost 24 years now. You see this line here we consider to be our average annual spend, which is around 500 million Swiss francs. We had a big peak here for capital expenditure when we constructed the Large Hadron Collider, which is our flagship accelerator. But beyond that period of time, you can see here our spend is relatively steady. This is our total spend, the top line that you see here. Below that, we drill down into the different categories. The green line is our supply spend, as we call it, which is for all of our material and equipment. And this is the spend that we focus on primarily because this is the one that we can source across our member states in the most suitable way. The yellow line is actually a split from the green line here, which is our utility spend. So for things like water and electricity. This line below here, the dark brown, is our service spend. So this is for service activities on the CERN site, where we really have boots on the ground. And then finally at the bottom there, this is our experimental spend. So where we have the accelerator, there are various points where there are experiments on that accelerator ring as well, and we buy on behalf of those experiments as well. And this is the typical level of spend you see there. So in terms of what we buy, and it's from a category perspective, again, with a site dating back 70 years now, we have big infrastructure demand, both from renovation and new build, both below ground and overground, and all of the technical services that go along with that. So that makes up quite a large proportion of our annual spend on a typical basis. Going further into electrical engineering and magnets for the accelerator itself, we have big demand here for transformers, switchboards, switchgear, cables, automation, power supply. Then on the IT side, we generate a huge amount of data, and therefore we require a lot of IT support, both hardware and software, to support that data generation and storage and management, and then all of the personal computing equipment that goes along with the people who are working on the site as well. We have big demand for mechanical engineering and raw materials. Again, the accelerator itself is essentially one large prototype, and we tender often with very detailed build-to-print specifications with high tolerances and special machining techniques. So we have very regular, steady demand in this area as well, often machining of quite specialized materials. And then on the beam and powering side, we have big demand in the area of electronics and radio frequency. including electronic components, PCBs, powering supplies, and radio frequency plants and amplifiers. And then drilling down a bit further, smaller categories, but still very important to us. Cryogenic and vacuum is very, very crucial given the operating conditions of the accelerator. Equally on photonics, detectors, and then the second part of the list, more related to the site operations for the facility here at CERN. So in terms of what we're working on at the moment, the flagship project right now is what we call the high luminosity LHC. So we're undertaking a large upgrade of the existing accelerator. We are, from a procurement perspective, probably over the halfway mark now of that, but that will begin operating in 2030 and run for at least another 10 years following that. So that's been very much a key focal point from a tendering perspective over the last 5-6 years or so. But beyond that, we are also studying what could come next beyond the LHC program. And as part of that, we have quite detailed studies ongoing for a potential future linear collider, which would run along the base of the Jura Mountains, close to the existing site. But on an even bigger scale, we're studying a potential project which we call the FCC, which is a future circular collider. And you can see here the existing LHC ring in blue, and the FCC would be this red ring here, which would dwarf it in comparison, running under Lake Geneva and out into the south of France. So this is under study at the moment. The decision on this project in particular is expected to be taken in 2027-28. But suffice to say, if that were to go ahead, there will be plenty of business opportunities for everybody. So again, with those categories in mind that I mentioned, this is a snapshot going back to 2023. We don't yet have the consolidated information for 24, but we will have soon. But this is relatively typical in recent years. So on supply contracts that I mentioned earlier, which we focus a lot of our attention on, around 250 million Swiss francs was spent in 2023. And the big areas of spend were civil engineering and building services, IT equipment. We recently built a new data center at CERN, so populating that represented quite a big demand of supply spend. Mechanical engineering of raw materials, electronics and radio frequency, and then the electrical engineering side here, so that they take up the vast majority of the spend currently. And then, as I mentioned before as well, we also buy for the LHC experiments. So CERN is the accelerator, but the experiments themselves are their own independent project entities, operated in their own independent way with their own governance structures. But the simple message for you today is that we buy for them as well. So any opportunities that you see presented will be for both CERN and for the experiments. But we'll always make that clear to you in any tender package you receive that you may be participating in. So from a perspective of how we buy, how we specify, and how we tender. So typically, if we're looking for off-the-shelf products or products that can be manufactured with existing techniques, we will very often use a functional specification basis. But when you consider that the accelerator at CERN is a giant prototype, essentially, we'll often carry out significant in-house design and then tender on a build-to-print specification basis. And you may also see when we do that we have prototyping or pre-series phases. I think I was momentarily muted there. Prototyping and pre-series phases. So therefore, suppliers have the chance to demonstrate that they can produce the prototype, perhaps with necessary tooling, before we then go into ahead with a series production phase as well. So that may be also something that you encounter depending on your area of activity. So next, a word on the rules and how we actually go about procuring from a process perspective. The starting point being our mission as a procurement service. Some of these will probably not surprise you, but as a public procurement entity, our objectives are to make sure that we meet the financial, technical, environmental, and delivery requirements, whilst keeping the overall cost for CERN as low as possible, ensuring the most advantageous use of our resources. A key element here is what we call achieving balanced industrial return for our member states, which is something of a particularity for CERN, and there are a couple of rules associated with that, which I'll explain in some subsequent slides. And then obviously all the while respecting CERN's procurement rules. Obviously, as a public entity, transparency and impartiality are essential for us. We understand that many companies participating in our tendering processes, for example, don't have English as a first language, so we want to make our documentation clear and digestible for any companies participating. Importantly, our tenders are open only to our member states. So you saw the list below before in previous slides about who our member states are. We only source from those member states. And objectivity and equal treatment, of course, is essential for our credibility as a procurement service. And we make great efforts to ensure that we respect that also. A few other details and particularities perhaps about our procurement processes. We have selective tendering procedures. They are not entirely open. So that means to say any company can participate in our pre-qualification phase to express their interest in participating. But CERN ultimately has the final decision on who we invite to participate in the invitation to tender stage itself. Equally on confidentiality, we do not conduct public openings. We don't publish the outcomes of our tenders, but we do give detailed feedback and ranking information on all of the companies that do participate. So if you do take part in a tender, you will receive that information, but that is not then published on our website, for example. Then in terms of how we go about adjudicating our contracts, we have two key elements. One is a lowest compliant bid assessment, which we typically use for supply contracts. So this means to say that whereby the bid fulfills technical, financial, and delivery information, we will award on a lowest compliant basis. So we will go to the lowest bidder. There is a caveat to that, which I'll explain shortly, which is called the alignment rule. But this is the principle. For supply contracts also, we can consider a best value for money approach. Typically, this is used more for our industrial service contracts, so for contracts where there are activities performed on the CERN site. But we have increasing flexibility now within CERN's procurement rules to consider best value for money adjudication basis for our supply contracts as well. So we have both angles. So again, if you're participating, please take care to ensure that you're aware of what basis the adjudication will be taken on. So in terms of how we run the tendering activity itself, for any requirement between 10,000 and 400,000 Swiss francs, we carry out what we call a price inquiry. So this is a one-shot tendering exercise that normally runs between 4 to 6 weeks. Anything above 50,000 Swiss francs is also issued to your country representative, your ILO. So they will have the opportunity to nominate companies from their member state also. And a typical tender package will consist of a technical specification and any technical annexes, the tender form covering all of the commercial elements, and then our general conditions for contracts and invitation to tender. So we try to keep them relatively light wherever possible. And anything above 200,000 Swiss francs is advertised on our business opportunities website. And there's a link within this presentation for you on that as well, if you haven't had the chance to see that page before. So then when we go beyond 400,000 Swiss francs, we move into a two-step process. And the first of those two steps is what we call the market survey. So this is essentially our pre-qualification phase. Again, this is advertised on our website. This consists of a technical description, which is a very lightweight specification, and then a qualification questionnaire setting out the eligibility criteria for any firms that may wish to participate. Again, we typically have a 4-week response time, but these market surveys stay open until we're ready to issue the invitation to tender, which is the second step. And again, as I mentioned before, these are issued to selected and qualified firms only, typically with a 4-week response time, but we often go longer for that for more complex requirements. Companies that participate have the right to ask questions, and we issue clarifications on that basis to all companies that participate. Again, your industrial liaison officer in your country will have visibility of this as well. And this is all managed via our e-tendering application. So everything must be submitted using that platform on which you receive the documentation in the first instance. Now, country of origin, I mentioned before that we only source amongst our member states, and therefore we have to request from you, and we trace very closely the country of origin of bids as they're submitted to us. Obviously, there can be complex requirements there with complex supply chains behind them, so it's important that you're aware of how we define this country of origin aspect. So for supply contracts, again, which we're focusing on primarily today, this is considered as the country where the supplies are manufactured or undergo their last major transformation. So it may be that you have various components that are supplied to your manufacturing premises, but you assemble them on site, and then therefore we consider your bid to be from the country in which you have manufactured and assembled those components. For service contracts, it's a bit more simple. It's simply the country in which you are established. But in any process, if you ever have any questions on this, feel free to let us know. We can always clarify exactly what needs to be considered in preparation for your bid. And why do we need to know? Why is this important to us? Well, this concept of industrial return to our member states is absolutely key. It's a key CERN objective. It's not just a procurement objective, it's an objective for the entire organization. So it's something where we put great effort and emphasis into, and this is why we track and trace this information so closely and have events such as today to try and ensure that companies across our member states are aware of what we do and enabled to participate. So with all these statistics that we record, we then every year publish how each member state is performing. And by doing that, we generate what we call industrial return coefficient. So perhaps just to simplify this slide, essentially, this is a 4-year rolling average of how your member state does with respect to its supply and service contracts by function of the budget contribution of that member state. And then once we have those numbers annually, we categorize each member state as either well balanced if they're receiving more than their budget contribution for their supply contracts or service contracts, or poorly balanced if they're below 1-to-1 ratio. And you can see here the distribution for the current reference period, which will be updated at the beginning of March. And then if we have member states in the poorly balanced category, as you see here, that then enables us to use a couple of additional tools within our tendering processes, which I'll explain now. The first of those is what we call the alignment rule. So again, to perhaps explain, we have, if for example, we have a bid opening on a lowest compliant bid basis, and the lowest bid is from a member state that is well balanced, but we have a second bid which is within 20% of that bid, but is originating from a poorly balanced member state. We then have the right to go to that second place bidder, ask them to align their bid with that of the well-balanced bid. And if they're able to do that, they will then be awarded the contract. And that's what we call the alignment rule. Obviously, 20% is quite a big margin. Companies often aren't able to do that or will decline the opportunity, but it is there to essentially give companies a second chance to win a contract if they are originating from poorly balanced member states. And then another tool that we have at our disposal is what we call limited tendering. So again, on the slide I showed previously with the categorization, you may have noticed that some of the member states were highlighted in green. These are the member states who are the 12 least well-balanced member states currently for the reference period. And in that case, we have the opportunity to carry out what we call limited tendering. So whereby we run a tendering process only to member states, to companies in those 12 member states. And that's to help us to steer a little bit more effectively contracts in that direction. There are some conditions around that. We have to have assurance that we have sufficient competition in those member states. And again, ILOs in those member states can propose companies to participate. Again, equally, we know that there can be complex supply chains in there. So it may be that there are some elements that aren't from the lowest poorly balanced member states, but provided there's a minimum of 60% of the bid value originating in those member states, then limited tendering applies. Okay, so in terms of impact of doing business with CERN, we carried out a survey towards the end of last year, having done one previously, perhaps more like 10, 12 years ago. Where we solicited feedback from companies who had won contracts or orders at CERN in 2022 and 2023. And this just gives you a snapshot. I won't go through them exhaustively. It gives you a snapshot of the feedback that we had from those firms, which was over 500 responses, should I say, which we consider to be very healthy. You can see in the top right-hand corner our TripAdvisor rating, should I say. But the feedback is across the board positive here, and you can see the impact that companies themselves tell us business with CERN has on their activities. So I hope this can give you some inspiration if you haven't worked with us before, or that it aligns with your experience if you are an existing supplier to us. On that same basis, if you do work with us and you would have interest in using our logo for your marketing materials, we're more than happy to provide that. We have a quick internal check step that we have to carry out. But if you have a proposal to do that, please don't hesitate to come to us, and you're more than welcome to use that within your publications. Just a word here on success factors. We talked in the build up to this event what could be of interest or use to companies. Again, bearing in mind that CERN is a little bit different. We have our own rules. So here are a few elements that we consider to be really important for us, particularly if perhaps you work on tenders and values and contracts that are a bit below some of the numbers I was talking about before. So the most important starting point is to register yourselves in our supplier portal, and it's linked there, and I'll mention it again in a moment. If you're registered in our supplier portal, you become visible to us. You're registered via your activity codes, so we can search for you. We can find you when we're preparing a tender and add you to our list from the outset. So please, if you haven't registered with us previously, take a moment to do that. It's an open supplier portal. It's an open database. It's not a pre-qualification process, so it can be done in a matter of minutes. And equally, that's also open to you as a company. You can also see the other companies that are registered on there. So perhaps if there's a requirement where you can fulfill 80% of the need, but you need a partner to perhaps do something else, you can also find other companies either in your country or elsewhere who are already registered at CERN, and you could then look to make contact and discuss a partnership. Connect to your ILO team. I hope today's event will give you that opportunity also if you haven't spoken with them in the past. The ILO role is really essential. We really work in partnership with the ILOs to ensure that we ourselves have visibility with companies in each member state. We know who is active, who is interested in working with us. So please do make yourselves known. Follow our forthcoming opportunities website. As I mentioned before, everything over 200,000 Swiss francs is advertised on there. Crucially, it may seem like an obvious thing to say, but ask questions if needed. We know we work with companies sometimes who are used to working in environments which are much more restrictive in terms of information exchange. At CERN, we're always open to discuss. Even when we're in the pre-qualification phase of preparation of a tender, we're always happy to have questions and have discussions, because we're still preparing our tender at that stage. We're still preparing our specification. So it may be that you want to bring something to our attention, another way of maybe looking at the requirement that we have. So please don't hesitate to put up your hand at any point in a procurement process. As a public organization, it's important that paperwork is completed and submitted on time. So please allow yourself sufficient time on the period of bid submission to allow yourself to do that. As I said before, be mindful of the adjudication methods used. Be clear on whether we're using a lowest compliant bid or a best value for money adjudication basis. It's really important that you have a robust understanding of your technologies and that you're focused on your core competencies and that you understand your pricing model. And also having a readiness to adapt to production techniques, because what we can sometimes ask for can be at the limit of what can readily be done. And we recognize fully that we may be pushing suppliers into areas where they haven't necessarily operated before. So we may ask quite a lot of you, but that also lends itself to the fact that we almost organically tend to work a lot with SMEs. We don't have an SME policy at CERN as such, but we just find that we typically work best with SMEs. And those are those companies who have that flexibility to maybe adjust and adapt their manufacturing techniques and production processes to fit what we need. So in terms of some information resources, this is our procurement website. It's really worth a visit if you haven't seen it before. There's all kinds of information on there which can explain some of these processes and procedures in more detail when you have the time to digest it. All of our shopping list is on there as well. As I mentioned before, this is what it looks like. So from early announcements of tenders when they're forthcoming, due to pre-qualification market surveys, and the invitations to tender as well. So everything is advertised on there, and both for CERN spend and experiment spend as well. Just to reiterate, the key takeaway today, please register yourself on our suppliers portal. That's the way that we will know who you are and that we will see you at the outset of any tendering process. So please take a few moments, if you haven't already had a chance to do so, to register yourselves there. And this is what it looks like once you're in the system in terms of the procurement interface. More of a minor logistical mention, but please ensure that our email address is not on your spam filter or your block list, because otherwise you won't see what we're sending you. But I'm sure you're able to do that readily. And then in terms of contacts, on our procurement website, you can find here in the top right-hand corner links to everybody within the procurement team. So today you've learned my name, you know who I am now. Don't hesitate to get in touch with me, but you'll also see everybody that works across all the different categories within procurement. Everything's listed, everybody's email address is there. So again, don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions on a current opportunity or something more general, or you want to advertise what you're able to do. As well as those procurement contracts at CERN, you also have the information on all of your ILOs contact information. I've highlighted 3 who are participating today, who work tirelessly for us and that we work with very closely, but all that information is also available on our website. And then last but not least, from the information resource side, we also have a LinkedIn channel. I know a lot of us spend time on there these days. We often advertise forthcoming opportunities on a weekly basis, and also share some stories here and there in terms of successful contracts with perhaps some interesting angles. So if you don't follow us on there yet, please feel free to take a look. Okay, so now just to have a look at some of the forthcoming needs that we have as well. As I mentioned before, I'll just jump to the first slide here to explain the structure of what you'll see here. So on each of these slides, you'll see a short description of what's required in terms of the scope, the activity code there. So this will link to your area of activity when you're registered in our database also, the cost range for each contract, and then the current planning for the market surveys, the pre-qualification phase, and the eventual invitation to tender. And we also link on each one the technical contact for each requirement as well. So again, don't hesitate to reach out to this contact if you have any technical questions on the requirement also. But in each case, you'll see when this will be published and when further information will be given. So we're starting here with cooling and ventilation and cryogenics primarily. I'll move through these quite quickly. It's more to give you a snapshot, as I mentioned before, because there are many slides here for you to digest and take a look at. But on the cooling and ventilation side, we have this cooling station consolidation program at the moment, which is ongoing. Which has quite significant requirements in this area. That's due for a contract to start before the end of this year. We have a cooling tower upgrade and consolidation project, which is a little bit further into the future. But again, if you're in this domain of cooling tower production and supply, then this could be of interest to you as well. We also have a blanket purchase contract forthcoming for our cooling systems as well. This market survey will be published relatively soon. And as you see, this is a very big contract, in fact, which will span several years. So if you're active in this environment, this could be quite a long-term partnership if you're able to participate. We also have a new building being constructed close to the center of our main site, a new radio frequency building where we'll have a big and quite advanced cooling and ventilation system to be installed there. Again, you can see here the market survey for this will start in Q2 of this year, with the invitation to tender following in the second half. And as part of that, also there'll be a specific clean room component within that, which will be the subject of a separate invitation to tender as well. So this will follow again on a similar timeline. Equally on the same project, we have a requirement for natural refrigerant heat pumps and chillers, following slightly later from a procurement process perspective. And then we also have a water treatment plant, not necessarily part of the same project, but not too far away from where the other activity is taking place. Again, this is a little bit further into the future, but just to give you an early signal that this is coming as well, which will be quite an important contract for us strategically. And then we also have a gas supply infrastructure consolidation project underway as well. The market survey for this is open already, so you can already download the technical description, the qualification criteria. The invitation to tender is expected to follow in the second quarter of this year. So please feel free to already take a look at that if this is in your area of expertise. And maybe just to mention on these first few slides that I've shown here, we are currently looking to organize a specific cooling and ventilation related industrial event, which will be organised by CERN probably in the second quarter of this year. So if that's an area that you are interested in, we'll be sharing more information on that going forward. We'll be a bit more dedicated to that domain. On to electrical engineering and magnets. We have a requirement here for circuit breakers and disconnector switches. Again, I think the market survey is very slightly late, but it'll be coming very, very soon, and the invitation to tender will follow shortly after. We may look to do 2 separate contracts for the 2 elements of that, but that will be determined as part of the invitation to tender process. A requirement for normal conducting electromagnets, yokes and coils. So the market survey is open already for this one. The invitation to tender will follow a little bit later this year and into next year. And then on electronics and radio frequency, so we have some quite specific fiber optic I/O cards. Again, the market survey is about to be launched. I think the announcement's already up on our website, and the invitation to tender will follow very soon. A requirement for micro D connectors and cables. Again, the market survey is out already. The invitation to tender is coming soon, so if you're active in this domain, please feel free to take a look. Higher luminosity and crab cavity RF circulators and loads. So again, the market survey has been published and the tender will be coming relatively soon. So again, you can have access to that information. Associated infrastructure from the high luminosity crab cavities as well are the HPRF stations, the high power radio frequency stations. Again, that market survey is open at the moment, so please feel free to take a look. And again, for the high luminosity project, we have a requirement for waveguide junctions and circulators. Once again, the market survey is open for you to take a look at the moment, and the invitation to tender will be coming soon. So quite a packet here at the moment of things that are very much in progress, and now is the time to get involved if you would be interested in participating. On to mechanical engineering and raw materials. I mentioned before our requirement for special fabrication techniques, high tolerance machining. We have several here as well, many of which are being used for our stores contracts as well. So I'll pass through these relatively quickly, but you see here titanium alloy and titanium forged blanks. We have a requirement there as well. Ultra high vacuum stainless steel forged blanks as well. The MS again is open at the moment, these for our stores. Similarly, stainless steel sheets here as well for high vacuum applications. Slightly different grade here also, but relatively significant quantities required here as well for our stores contracts. And also on oxygen-free copper as well. And then going into things even more exotic, if any of you have experience of machining with marble, quite particular, but we have some requirements here as well in that domain. For our X-Tax project, this will be a price inquiry. It's a little bit particular, of course, but we're very interested to hear anybody that has experience of working in this area. Also some copper blanks for the same project. And some cast iron requirements as well for the same requirement. And then also in the area of aluminium and aluminium alloy machining in stainless steel, more requirements here for these X-Tax project. And I think last but not least in this domain, tungsten copper plates also for our CMS experiments. So I mentioned before that we source also for our experiments. This is a requirement for the CMS detector, which is one of our biggest detectors on the LHC ring. So on to sensors and alarms, optics and photonics. We have some requirements here. You'll see these dates. These are slightly delayed, so they're yet to be published, but they'll be coming out very soon for some optical interrogator units. And similarly for some alignment sensors, both wire positioning sensors and hydrostatic level sensors. We have 2 separate packages there for each of the 2 requirements, but they're being managed by the same team. Again, these dates are slightly out now, but we are proceeding relatively quickly with them at the moment. Then something maybe slightly different. We have a requirement at the moment for a market survey, which is currently open for a voice alarm and evacuation system within the LHC tunnel. So again, if this is something that looks like it could suit your competence, we'd be very interested to hear about it. And also, we have a requirement for helium leak detectors. This would be a blanket purchase contract over 5 years. And then finally, on the IT side, we have 3 packages here. I'll skip through them quickly, but they are what we call the Human Capital Management Suite. So for our HR department at CERN, they have a major project in place now to develop a whole new tool for the personnel management side. So again, this is moving away from the engineering aspects for the previous slides that you've seen. So this will require a tool in its own right, an application for the management, a third package for the implementation of that tool and to have it deployed on the site, and then a third requirement as well for the quality assurance, the maintenance of that package as well, which can be distinct. So these are 3 separate packages which are coming very, very quickly. So the market surveys for these are published at the moment, and the invitations to tender will follow later on this year. So again, this is something a little bit different from our normal day-to-day, but if it's something of an area that you are involved in, please feel free to make yourself known to us. And that wraps up my slides, Martin. So I'll stop sharing my presentation at this point. And back over to you.
So thank you, Adam, for a really, really thorough and comprehensive presentation. We actually talked to Adam beforehand as well, and obviously we are going to share the slide deck to everybody who have registered to this very event. But also, if you have like some questions, concerns, then Adam kindly provided all the contacts needed in order to reach out. Or if you have questions directly to Adam, feel free to contact him as well. But Adam, if you can spare some more minutes, then there were a couple of questions. And first of all, first question goes on software tendering, because the company has indicated that there are quite many tenders available, which are basically seeking for like conventional software like Microsoft Office or ERP solutions. But there are not too many like custom-made software that CERN is in need of. Do you see that this situation is going to be changing in 2025, or do you have like some insights on the software tenders such as well?
Yeah, I think to kind of talk in general terms, historically at CERN, going back over many decades, we've had a very, very big base of IT capability in-house, which has led to us having a whole suite of in-house tools that have been developed for a very long time. But slowly but surely, those are either coming to end of life or being replaced by market solutions instead. So it may be that you haven't seen historically a steady stream of those, but we do still have quite regular software requirements going forward. We do still have quite a lot of in-house development. It remains the case as well, but we do have opportunities. And as I mentioned before, anything over that 200,000 mark is advertised on our website as well. So there are certainly opportunities there. Maybe not as many as you may expect, given that we have that degree of in-house capability, but they are there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. I'm just gonna like extend this question. Like, if you compare the custom-made solutions that you are in search of or tendering, but also compare that to the off-the-shelf solutions, then what is the balance there? Like, are the majority of the procurement basically seeking for the off-the-shelf solutions, or custom-made things are there as well?
I would say a very general response, unfortunately, Martin, it's a bit of both. It can be both. We look wherever possible to keep things as less obscure as possible and as open as possible, because we have this underlying obligation to source across our member states. But again, there's no kind of simple answer to that, shall I say. It's a case by case depending on the requirement. So, which is perhaps the answer that you would expect me to give. But in each case, for any tender, we will describe in detail. And I think really importantly on that as well, if you are a company participating today that's operational in that kind of domain, you'll see early what our announcement is on our requirement. Please make yourselves known to us at that stage and let us know what you can and can't do. And we're still very, very much open to discuss then what we can also consider in our requirements. So please take that opportunity to let us know your thoughts when you do see those opportunities coming forward.
Okay, so moving on, there was a question about the low balance and high balance countries and their opportunities to win the tenders. Could you briefly come back to this topic once again and elaborate a bit how this win over high balance country can be achieved if you are bidding from low balance country? So can you elaborate a bit on that as well?
Sure. So I mean, maybe the first thing to say, which isn't necessarily obvious from the slides, is that when we talk about this idea of us having selective invitation to tender procedures, one of the main reasons we want to do that and that we have that in place is because we want to choose companies to participate, which gives a good representation of companies originating in our poorly balanced member states. So step one is that we will try to ensure that competition passes across poorly balanced member states as well, and that we don't, for example, have a big mass of companies from well-balanced member states in a competitive process. So that's the first step. Then in terms of the rules that I explained, the alignment rule is essentially one whereby it's still an open competition when we have a typical tender. But if we have bids originating from poorly balanced member states, which are within that 20% window of a well-balanced bid, which is the lowest compliant, then we may come back to you to ask you to match with that lowest bid from a well-balanced member state. So that's another second chance step where we have the opportunity to steer that tender in that direction instead. And on that, again, as a mentioned for the limited tendering aspect, it's the same for the alignment rule as well. You may partner, it may be, for example, you have a tender with an installation requirement and you'll have the need to partner with a French or Swiss company to do some work on the ground just to ensure that things are operational. We consider a bid to be poorly balanced if at least 60% of the value of the bid originates from poorly balanced member states. So it doesn't have to be a full 100%. We recognize there are sometimes elements that do need to be sourced locally. So we keep that flexibility in there to allow the maximum opportunity. And obviously limited tendering is probably the most extreme example where we set it up from day one, whereby we are only inviting companies to participate from poorly balanced member states. So these are kind of the different aspects that we see. And equally with the alignment rule in mind, what we often see, it's not reported in the same way because it's kind of an unseen dynamic. But very often French or Swiss companies will partner with companies from poorly balanced member states to ensure that they already have a good poorly balanced component in their bid so that the alignment rule will not apply. So it has kind of an influencing effect already at the outset in terms of who companies look to work with. And that can be very, very useful as well.
Okay, very good. So basically it makes total sense to find different partners in terms of going to bid, let's say, for bigger tenders and maybe joining the partnerships between different countries, high performing and low performing ones, right?
Yep, that can very much be an angle. That's something that we encourage. And equally, I mentioned before, our database is open, so please take a look on there if that's something that would suit a requirement that maybe you're interested in participating in, but maybe you need a proportion of support. And equally, you can also feel free to speak to your ILO as well, who may be able to give you some guidance on who they're familiar with and who you could work with.
Okay, thank you, Adam, very much. If you have more questions to Adam, feel free to send them in, and Adam is going to be with us for some more moments, so he can basically take the question in the chat room directly as well. But once again, thank you for the insights, and it was rather comprehensive and one of the best presentations I've seen about CERN so far. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Martin.
So, moving on now. So, as we got access to all the technical details now, then it's time to dig deeper into practical experiences, right? So, for that purpose, we have lined up 2 companies who have so far successfully worked with CERN. And as I can see, both of those companies are actually coming from high balance countries as well. So, probably this is one of the main reasons why those countries are performing so well, right? But first of all, I would like to give the floor to Adam Koch from Co-Virtual Nordic AB Sweden. And Adam, if you can hear us and join in, then the stage is yours, and feel free to share the screen as well.
Hello, and can you actually see my screen?
Yes, the screen is visible, and yeah, everything
Experience working with CERN, I hope it says. Yeah. All right, so I'm Adam Koch from Go Virtual Nordic in Sweden, Gothenburg. I've been working for CERN as the commercial contact within Goroško for about 2 years, and recently doing a delivery with some storage units to the data center at Geneva. So I also had a great help from my dear colleague Sebastian, and he's also joining here today. I've given it some thought, and what's important with the possibility of doing some repetition from Adam's presentation here, perhaps, but from our perspective, it's really important to go through the technical specification really carefully and trying to identify early, if possible, if there is any particular manufacturer or manufacturers in plural that are extra suitable in what the technical guys are asking for. Sometimes when CERN is doing procurements, it's more or less obvious that they might look for any particular type of manufacturer within, for example, servers or storage units, as the ones we are selling and designing. And sometimes it's a very open procurement where we have very much flexibility in choosing the best equipment. But my first tip is to really identifying and trying to identify as early as possible when you get the procurement material where to aim at, so you don't end up with 5 or 10 different manufacturers and the project might be too big and you end up not getting it on time back to CERN. Involve your manufacturer. This of course depends how you as a supplier work. You might work, I mean, you might be the manufacturer itself, then you're probably and hopefully quite close to the manufacturing. But I obviously can't know all the technical details in the equipment in a data center, so it's really important to, as early as possible, involve the right persons and involve the manufacturer, making them also positive towards the ask and the project that CERN is asking for, so that they will both give you good expertise and all the documents needed, because there is usually a lot of document and technical information needed and asked for. So and then of course finalizing a very competitive price is easier if you also get a good involvement from the technical department at the manufacturer. I actually didn't convert in the last procurement because I wanted to make it easy for both myself and from CERN. So we actually quoted and sold in Swiss franc. Not all companies can do that, and internally here that wasn't a really positive thing. It was more of a problem, of course. And what I learned from this is that I don't think, to my understanding, CERN cares if you quote in euro, US dollars, or any of the other currencies that they accept. So don't make it too easy for yourself in that sense. You might have a problem in the other end, because if you actually do quote in Swiss franc, you are unable to go back to US dollars. If you win the procurement, I actually did that with Swiss franc and then asked the procurement department, can we just convert it to US dollars? Well, they could, but then they go back to the date when you won the procurement and they translate the currency to, in this case, US dollars, or what you're asking for, on the date when you won the procurement. And that might be an issue for you if the currency have been going up or down or so. So I would recommend generally to quote in the same currency that you buy your equipment. That makes it usually easier for you to not having the currency problem in afterhand, because that can of course go both ways, both to your positive side and to your negative side, depending on the market, right? So I have wrote here currency convert, because many times, at least in the procurement the last time, CERN asks in Swiss franc, and I recommend you to convert to your local currency, the currency that you buy and acquire equipment in. All right. After you've hopefully won a procurement, don't be afraid of obviously talking to your technical contacts in the procurement and ask them, with the risk of them having asks that go beyond what you actually have accepted in the quote. But it's always good to have a communication, I suppose. And in this case, there was some extra asks after we won the procurement, and because we ended up having some sweaty time when it comes to delivering these storage units, because CERN wanted to get them as well, basically as soon as possible, and before Christmas in this case. But I still think it's a good idea to talk to your technical contacts also regarding what they want and what they need in terms of technical documentation and such, because they usually know the procedures better than you because they've done them before. And finally, if you don't have your own freight company that delivers to Switzerland or so, many does not, I suppose, be aware that many freight companies don't have knowledge on the procedure of customs when you deliver to Switzerland. There is obviously, as an example, if you travel from Sweden to Switzerland with goods, you can take two ways. If you do the shortest way, which is Sweden, Germany, and then directly into Switzerland, on the other hand, there is more documentation that needs to be done. TCH document, if I don't remember wrong, is needed. And that procedure is not something that all freight companies are aware of and have experience from. If you, on the other hand, go Nordics or Sweden, Germany, France, and then from France entering Switzerland, then you have it an easier way with the documentation, but you have a longer travel way instead. So be aware of these factors when you talk to your freight companies, and really make sure that they fully understand both the customs procedure and also the specific delivery notes or delivery instructions that CERN has, because they have quite a few delivery instructions. So try to involve yourself, and it's not finished before the fat lady sings, which I mean in this case, not until you actually have the delivery delivered to CERN at their site in Meyrin, Geneva. Then you can more or less breathe out, but before then you can't breathe out. Just some few pictures as a last, well, to see how this looks in practical. I talked to the CERN people just shortly after we won the procurement. They said, do your best to send the equipment really soon, even though you have until 31st of January. We really appreciate you get it before Christmas. That ended up getting us a truck at 10 o'clock p.m. on a Friday night, fully loaded with these, well, pallets. We had to open everyone up. Sebastian was my lifesaver in this case. So Sebastian and me filled up the entire warehouse we have, including some of our office space with most of these, because we actually didn't get all of them at once from the manufacturing facility. But yeah, this is how it looked, and we managed to work hard for a few days and ship them out. And I think they were received around 19th of December at CERN. And then they actually got another little shipment now in January as well. I think 10 minutes, that was rather perfect. I hope, maybe 11. nobody stopped me yet. So
no, it's all good, Adam. Thank you. Moving on with the question, I really loved your tips because they were rather practical ones, and especially I love the currency thing, because obviously it makes sense to check out like which is the most preferable currency back in the time when you place the bid, right? And immediately converting that. But anyways, I just wanted to check, like, Co-Virtual Nordic, like, what is the main business line of the company, and participating the tender for CERN, was it like something different that you did, like outside of the company's main business line, or basically you delivered the goods and services that you are doing like in daily based as well?
Well, on the first hand, GoVirtual generally works with high performance computing, with design and install and maintain support data centers where you have servers, storage units, both more stupid storage, so to speak, or intelligent storage with auto tiering and those kind of functions, together with all the network that is usually surrounding a data center with high-speed interconnectors. And we work with most of the manufacturers out there, and we are around 10 people in total working in mainly Sweden and some of my colleagues in Germany. This procurement, as you ask if this is a typical one for GoVirtual, well, yes, in the sense that it's data storage equipment, and we do sell both larger amounts and smaller amounts than these. This was a number of petabyte storage, so it's obviously a lot of storage. You can this number of pallets with storage. If you convert it into a normal laptop, you could say this is 80,000 laptops when it comes to hard drives. So it's a lot of storage, and it's a little bit untypical for GoVirtual in the sense that it was basically only stupid storage, not so much intelligence involved into these boxes. Our part in this was rather to check that every box was containing what it should, placing a QR code on it, obviously designing the right type of storage disks, I mean the right type of sizes on them and the right type of footprint on every one of these around 30 units that we sold. So yeah, I would say within our scope, yes.
Okay, but really quickly, I need to ask that. Is participating in different tenders something typical to Virtual Nordic, or you did that just because you saw a very amazing match between the technical terms of the tender and the product and service line that you are providing?
Two things here. Firstly, actually, I don't know how to unshare. That's a problem I've had in the past with Zoom. So I don't know how to do that for the moment. Secondly,
now it's all good.
Perfect. Can you just repeat your question? I'm great with doing two things.
I just wanted to check, is participating in different tenders something natural for Co-Virtual, or how did you end up working with CERN, like eventually at all? Like, are you screening constantly different opportunities how to work with NGOs, or you just saw a very awesome and perfect match between the tender technical details and your company's products and service line?
Great question. I mean, obviously not all companies in the entire world or Europe even works with CERN, even though they should, I suppose. We, or GoVirtual, has history of selling data center equipment from time to CERN over the last 10 years, but that can also mean selling nothing for a couple of years or even more. But about 2 years ago, last time we sold some networking equipment, and therefore CERN has always been in my both list of checking what's happening for them, as well as my wish list. I mean, it's an honor to deliver storage units or data center equipment to a facility that is more or less the brain behind internet, yeah, I guess it's thanks to the fact that we have sold CERN in the past that that's the reason why I have been in the CERN, and we have also been in about 3-4 other procurements where we haven't won. So that's part of the world as well for us. We do involve ourselves in procurements, and we don't always win.
Okay, just if you already highlighted that, really quick question, like how many bids have you placed and how many out of those have you won? What is the percentage?
I would say then 25% we have won, and the other ones, either we didn't go to the next step of into the RFP. They might just do a request for information, and we answer that. And I think Adam mentions here that it could be a fast procedure. It could also be a very big procedure. The RFI document can be very extensive, and it can take a long time. It took half a year before we got an answer on one of these, that we didn't go to the next round. And then there was a couple of other procurements that we didn't win. So around 25%, I would say 1 out of 4 procurements we've won.
That's a really good ratio, I guess.
It could be worse and it could be better.
It always can be better. But anyways, thanks, Adam. The time has run out, but I hope you are going to be sticking with us a couple of more minutes. So if somebody out of you has questions to Adam right now, then feel free to use the chat room, and I hope Adam can check this one out as well and answer you in written form. But thanks again. And moving on with the other case study, and this one comes from Estonia, and I'm really glad to have here Roman Klepikov from the company Interconnect Product Assembly. And the company is concentrating on mechanical and electronical engineering, doing custom-made solutions for different use cases. And Roman, if you can hear us, feel free to share your screen and slides and present your case.
Yeah, good morning. I hope you can hear me.
I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, so give me a second. I'll try to share the screen as well. Just tell me if you see it.
Now the screen is visible, so if you can initiate the presentation mode, it would be perfect.
Yes, here it is.
Okay, so, very good.
Yeah, good morning to everybody from me as well, and thanks for inviting to this seminar. It's great to share the experience we have with CERN. So my name is Roman Klepikov. I'm the management board in Interconnect Product Assembly, shortly IPA. Few words about IPA. We are located in Estonia, and we are subcontracting manufacturing company. So I will share, let's say, the manufacturing experience with CERN. So we are in different industries such as semiconductors, military, medical, energy, automotive, railway. So let's say CERN is the first customer in science, if I can say so, industry. And in IPA, we do provide to the customer with the design development, prototyping, serial production, supply chain management, and hub sourcing. With the main part is the serial production, what we are doing. We are located in Tallinn, next to Tallinn Airport, and you can see our facility on the picture here. So I will probably not tell much new to what has been told already, but I'll try to repeat and maybe add some more comments to the slides I have here. We started with CERN, I think 4 years back, and it takes time to work with CERN. It's not a simple process. We needed to fill the supplier forms in CERN database, and that's what I'm saying needs to be done carefully and considering all the aspects. It's quite a lot of forms with a lot of information required there. but if you do it right, then you get the right output from there as well. So what we did, we filled the supplier forms. We insert the right interests in supplier form as well. The ones who haven't seen the supplier form, then supplier form will ask from you the areas where you're interested at. And there are quite a lot of categories, and there are a lot of products under the different categories. And it's quite easy to pick up maybe the wrong ones for you as well. So you might be greedy, or you might be looking for work, and you might be interested in winning more projects. So you might choose quite a lot, but that would pay you back later when you start to receive more market surveys which are not for you. So in order to be correct, insert your data correctly, and then you get the correct request from CERN. Market surveys, as I understood, they are pretty much the same for everybody. So we are bidding from Estonia, and I can see that the other companies are bidding from all over the Europe. The documents in the beginning are quite detailed, and as mentioned here several times, they need to be checked carefully, and don't be afraid to ask the questions. We did ask the questions, and we got a fantastic feedback from CERN purchasing team, and later on from CERN engineering team. I would say that the CERN people are very capable to answer all the questions, but just make sure that you're asking the questions. I would recommend to calculate the price carefully, as my understanding that the later price correction is not acceptable. We won electromechanical cabinet, not the one on the picture. The one on the picture is just a reference, but let's say it's a more complicated electrical cabinet, and it's easy to make a mistake when you do the price calculation. So again, we ask a lot of questions, and we make sure that the price what we're offering to CERN is 100% correct, is the price that we can afford, even after some period where CERN will make the decision. Again, a tip, make your engineering team ready. The products are not 100% designed for production. What I mean here is that the documentation was fine, but for example, what we noticed, there were some components in the product that became obsolete for the moment when we started to purchase these components. So we had to look for alternative components, and we had to offer CERN to use these alternative components. And in overall, to go through the technical package, it's quite good task. So make sure that you have a good engineering team when you bidding for the first projects. I guess when you bid for second, third, and fourth project, you know exactly how many engineers do you need for the work. But for the beginning, have enough engineering support ready for you. The positive thing that the first sample was approved in IPA production, and I personally like this a lot because we had a great possibility to review the product in the detail. And in our case, in manufacturing case, the devil is in the details. So we didn't want to have any negative feedback from the customer at the later stage. So we actually had the sample ready in IPA. We have done our internal inspection. We have done our internal testing and protocols and all the needed paperwork. And then we had a couple of CERN specialists or engineers coming over, and we did the same with them. And in 99%, they were happy, and there was like few things that we pick up which they didn't like. and most of the things that were like different from the actual result, comparing with the let's say the products on the drawing, so they didn't like some of the solutions, and they asked us if you could improve that for the future. So we did, and that was fine. And the serial production was allowed, only the first units were approved. So there was no chance for us to start and make the massive mistake, but just after the sample was approved. But again, that gave us a good possibility to make all the work instructions and all the quality documents, and again, use all that as a golden standard for all the units that we are actually producing for CERN right now. The question, like CERN, and there was a question, but why not? I mean, as been said here before, CERN is a large and a very reliable organization. I think it's, honestly saying, one of the most reliable in Europe organization. So why not to have CERN as a customer? Repeating myself, CERN information level, technical level is great. And as I understood, the wish to support the suppliers, doesn't mean that they would like to develop the suppliers, but all the contacts we have, they certainly were happy to support us with the questions, with the technical questions, with the background questions, and all the answers we received, they were professional, they were fast, and they were practical. In the beginning, the cooperation start will require a lot of paperwork, as I mentioned, for the supplier profile. Again, the market inquiries, they will also be quite intensive. So there is a lot of information to study first before you could submit or give the answer. But again, if I compare it with the other customers here in IPA nowadays, it's pretty much the same. So it's the same approach, and we don't see much difference between our customer and CERN approach. Maybe even plus to the CERN approach, that the information is correct, information is technical, and the chance of winning the project is, I guess, quite good. The challenges we saw with CERN, and I'm sharing not only the positive, but maybe the negative experience as well, but at least they are honest. CERN is very sensitive on price. We won a project, but we lost another project, and we lost another project just for a few percent price difference. And they were quite similar projects. So one is in Estonia, and the other project went in totally different country. It's not even the Baltic states. So make sure your price calculation is correct and you are not greedy on the profit. Then I'm sure you have a good success. As I mentioned, again, the design might be not 100% correct, the technical documentation, and you will need to do some changes, or you need to do some negotiations or suggestions to CERN. But again, comparing with some other customers, what we have here in IPA, I think the information from CERN is absolutely fine and give you the good possibility to work. And I don't know, just from me or from IPA team, IPA is very happy to work with CERN. And if you ask our opinion, then we are definitely advising the other companies to become a partner for CERN and increase the Baltic region manufacturing share. If you take all the Baltic states, then we are small countries, and it's quite difficult to get more products here. But again, if we are positioning ourselves as a Baltic region and will include, for example, Finland and Sweden, then we are quite strong, and I'm sure we can play a significant role in CERN supply base. So that's shortly from me. So maybe any questions?
Thank you, Roman, for really your insight. I especially love that you also shared the concerns and troubles that you have had as well. You brought out very well this pricing issue, that it's basically impossible to change the price afterwards if new circumstances might appear. But what about the product like technical spec as such? Like if you mentioned that first of all, before going to serial production, you need to present like one working device, basically. So if CERN is making like different adjustments there, how can you actually make that happen in terms of engineering and making it financially feasible for yourself as well?
Mm-hmm. We introduced basically there were questions, as you mentioned, there were questions of how to complete the first sample, as some of the required solutions were not achievable anymore. So we proposed various solutions for CERN how to fix it. So they choose suitable one. So we did, and they came over and we looked at it, and then they found a couple of small things they didn't like, but the talking with the representatives, I understand that it was okay for them to compensate if the change would require financial impact, but luckily for us, the change it was not a big change. As I mentioned, it was 1% change, so it didn't have any financial impact. So we didn't had to change the price or negotiate the new price, but I got a feeling that if we would have to do that, then the CERN people would be happy to do that as well, because the price, in this case, the price change would be generated by CERN.
Okay, so basically, if there would have been like major technical changes needed to be introduced, then obviously the pricing and the bid itself would have been changed as well. Okay, but I just want to reflect with you the final point. Adam was mentioning that working with CERN, it kind of gives like the credibility for the companies as well. As IPA is working with multiple customers, I assume, then has this somehow helped you to make additional sales, engage new customers, if they know that you have been working with CERN? Is it kind of like a credibility mark for you as well?
It certainly is, and it gives a good reference. And normally, when we are referring that we are partner for CERN, then for some people who know CERN, it's immediately a great impact. And for some people who doesn't know, and you explain them what CERN is, then they are admiring that fact that we are the suppliers already to CERN. Yes.
And I need to ask, like, how many tenders have you participated, or how many bids have you made so far, and what is the success rate that you have seen?
That's a good question. I supposed to tell it myself as well. We participated in 5 bids, and we won 1. So the ratio is 20%. But we still have a couple of bids pending, and we are hoping that we're going to win some more. So perhaps this percent is going to grow. And here again, I would like to thank Robert Aare, who is our local CERN representative here in Estonia, with his support and his communication on all the cooperation with CERN.
Okay, very well. Thank you, Roman, and I wish you best of luck in participating those tenders that are ongoing right now. Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
Okay, and moving on now. So Roman made perfect intro by saying that Robert Aare, who is the regional representative of CERN here in Estonia, helped him a lot. So now all the participants, you have this unique opportunity to actually have the meeting with the regional or country representatives of yours. And for that purpose, we have now created 3 different groups and rooms for those personal meetings. The group number 1 is going to be for the companies participating from Estonia, Finland, but all the other countries besides Latvia and Sweden as well. Group number 2, it's for Latvian companies, and group number 3, it's going to be for the Swedish companies. So I hope you can see now the breakout rooms, and please select now the group corresponding the country where your company is coming from. And again, if the company is outside of all those 4 mentioned countries here, please join group number 1. And there you can have the information which is rather more country specific, and you can ask and interact directly to the ILOs of CERN to approach them with all the concerns, issues, questions that you might have after all those presentations, but maybe also elaborating more directly the very service, business and product line of your company, and find out whether there are ongoing business opportunities already there listed in the tender list of CERN. So take a moment and please select the right type of group. The ILOs are expecting you there, and if everybody has selected the group, then we can kick off with the breakout sessions as well. And we are going to be expecting everybody back exactly in 22 minutes or so. So welcome back, everybody. I hope we didn't disturb you in an inconvenient moment there. So, but anyways, I hope you had the fruitful discussion there. You got to ask and got the answers to all the questions that you might have. And I especially would like to thank Robert, Alise, and Frederick, the ones who were moderating the breakout groups. And for all the companies attended the breakout sessions. Here on the screen you can see the direct contacts of the ILOs and your regional representation of CERN as well. And if you want to follow up your discussions there, feel free to contact the ILO. But anyways, as we have a couple of minutes left, I just wanted to highlight
I think the audio got cut off.
Looks like.
Yes.
opportunities process. Yeah, the tendering process that the UN has, and if you want to be part of that, make sure to visit the www.tehnopol.ee website, where you can find all the going to have different online webinars during March, April as well, so stay tuned, wait for them. We're going to announce all those events shortly. Also, I would definitely like to highlight that there is going to be a dedicated business missions to IDEX Fair, which is happening in Geneva in October 25. And if you're interested in that, again, let us know, because we're putting together the delegation of different companies, and there on site you can have the unique opportunity to meet different NGOs, including UN, but also CERN. If you want to be engaged in the project INGO, then please visit the website. This can be found in Central Baltic website and /projects/INGOs. Hunt that down. You can find all the relevant information about the project, including all the webinars, all the missions that we are having. And if you want to have a more personalized set of information, then here you can see the list of project partners and their representatives. We are there to help you, so feel free to contact us directly as well. As I mentioned, all the slides will be distributed to all the participants, including the presentations that were provided by CERN, but also the companies here. So you can have all the information out from the slide text as well. And this is a wrap, I guess. So I hope you had a very good insight what is happening in CERN, how the tendering process is going on there. I'm going to take the Adam word here as well. So first step is the foremost one. So you need to get yourself listed and registered in the tendering website. So provide all the details, information already right now about your company, because verification takes some time. So if you start right away, you are going to have a head start, and you can get like directly the information about the new and upcoming tenders that CERN is having. But once again, thank you for being with us for these 2 hours. And once again, if you have any questions, any concerns, feel free to address them to us. Have a nice day, and see you during the next webinars.